Okay, so good morning, you all. We are officially starting. Uh, Today we'll continue our discussion on the order of discourse, Michel Foucault. And before we start, we left the discussion in the point that we were discussing the idea of madness. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that when Foucault talks about madness, he's not talking about only, he's taking the example, but he's not talking about only those people that we set aside in asylums or mental hospitals for mental care. Foucault is talking about non-framed discourse. So the non-standard discourse, the discourse that is, let's say, dissident from what the so-called normal people would use, would make use, would speak. Okay, so the languages of absurd, for example. And I would like to start the class today with a piece of humor by Chico Anísio and Chico Milani, which is a sketch from Globo TV in the 1990s. In fact, there are two sketches that I would like to play for you to understand something about non-frame discourse and about madness. It's pretty funny. You have to contextualize that. So I'll give you some context. At those times, the mayor of Rio de Janeiro was César Maia. César Maia is Rodrigo Maia's father. And it's something about... Oh, thank you for... thank you, Vivi. Yes, Sonic, good. So let's contextualize this. So César Maia was Rio de Janeiro's mayor, and he is criticizing him. Basically, it's a character that's supposedly mad. Okay, it's a Vasco da Gama supporter, and he is supposedly mad. So I'll start by the first one. He is in a hospital talking to his doctor, and his doctor seems to be as mad as he is, the psychiatrist. And it's a very interesting chat, and there are lots of language games that are played to make the jokes fun. Okay, the image is not very good because it was recorded in the old videocassette recorder, the famous VCR that you don't even know what it is, but but I think you'll have some fun watching this.
Todo mundo louco. Oba! O que é que você está fazendo?
Refresco de limão, quer um pouquinho?
Não,
Do you hear?
detesto bebida alcoólica.
Yeah, teacher.
Para ti. Para mim. Veja um rum. É bom? Eu acho muito ruim. Ah, eu estou precisando. Quero me reanimar.
É o leão?
O rei dos animais?
Ah,
É o tigre.
então é rei.
Errou. Noto que está cansado.
Notou isso, notou? Estou cansadíssimo.
Cansadíssimo, mas que pena. Logo agora que eu ia lhe pedir uma mãozinha.
Seria inútil, eu não poderia dar, eu só tenho essas duas.
Oh, que pena. Mas vejo que está saindo de viagem.
Não, estou chegando de viagem. Eu estava na cidade de maior cultura do país, Volta Redonda.
O quê? Não me diga, eu não sabia que Volta Redonda era uma cidade assim.
Ah, não sabia? Falta de observação. Qualquer pessoa vai pra lá, uma besta quadrada e volta redonda.
Sim, mas que absurdo eu ter me esquecido isto. Mas é que hoje eu estou um pouco irritado.
Não se percebe? Irritado por quê?
Um ladrão roubou o meu carro.
Pior pro ladrão. Agora quem vai pagar gasolina é ele.
Pratica algum esporte?
Eu jogo tênis.
Mas que maravilha, eu também gosto muito de jogar tênis.
Vamos jogar tênis, então?
Vamos jogar tênis.
Que legal. Olha o tênis.
Opa, atenção.
Olha o tênis.
Atenção.
O espelho.
A continha dele, doutor.
A sua dívida.
Vai pagar a sua dívida?
Com licença. A minha dívida, por favor. Eu acho que eu vou rolar.
Vai rolar?
É.
Não, deixe. Eu rolo para o senhor.
Ora, muito obrigado.
Com
muito
licença,
obrigado,
com
muito
licença.
obrigado, muito obrigado.
Ah, o jornal.
É? Jornal?
Sim, o jornal. O jornal está dizendo alguma novidade?
A mim não disse nada.
Meu amigo, precisamos nos cuidar.
E muito.
O mundo está ficando louco.
Louquíssimo.
Equilibrados, somente nós, porque por aí só tem tantão, só tem tantão, só tem...
Okay, I'll play another video. Okay, it's the same kind of video. Let me see.
Teacher, can you send us the link later?
For sure. I'll play the second one. It's also very fun. It's all about non-frame discourse. You see how many language jokes there are in the sketch? So this is from 1996, okay?
Você tem pecado, meu filho?
Just a comment. This video seems to be very adequate for present moments, okay? I'll play it.
Você tem pecado, meu filho?
Padre Hélio, tenho um recado. Um recado de Deus.
Ah, é? De Deus? Deus falou com você?
Não diretamente.
Então ele enviou um sinal.
Não. Deixou uma mensagem na minha secretária eletrônica.
Você está querendo dizer que Deus tem telefone?
Claro que não. Ele ligou do orelhão.
Sei. E o que foi que ele disse?
Disse que eu sou o novo Messias.
Meu filho, mentir é pecado.
Concordo. Quando Deus ligar de novo, vou mandar que ele pague uma penitência.
Você vai mandar Deus pagar penitência?
O senhor não disse que mentira é pecado? Ao dizer que eu sou o novo Messias, ele estava mentindo.
Pelo menos você sabe que não é o Messias.
Messias eu sou. O que eu não sou é novo. Contando as vidas passadas, já tenho mais de 1000 anos.
Você está liberado, meu filho. Louco não peca.
Está certo, padre, mas não precisava ter contado isso para o César Maia.
Right. So, well, this is all about non-frame discourse, okay? The jokes that lie behind this sketch, or these sketches, lie on the fact that language is not always clear. When we say something, it's never guaranteed that what we say is going to be understood as we intended to be, okay? Now let's go to the serious part of the class. Okay, I'll share the screen with the slides. So, when Foucault talks about madness, he claims that a mad person is considered to be mad because his or her speech does not flow like other people's, like the majority of people. And I think it's precisely what you have seen in the sketch. So it's precisely through discourse and the use of discourse and the flow of someone's discourse that we can recognize and care for someone that we consider to be mad. And what is the mad person? Is it the one that does not produce meaning? Do you think a mad person does not produce meaning? Well, Foucault will say that the way of producing meaning of a mad person is not necessarily the same way we produce meaning, but it does not mean there is no meaning at all. There is some meaning. Remember the doctor talking to the patient in the first sketch? Do they seem to share the meanings? Would you say they share the meaning, what they are talking about? When, for example, he says that he likes to play tennis, and the doctor says, I love to play tennis too, let's play tennis. And do they end up playing tennis?
Yeah, they seem to understand each other fine.
Yes.
They're in on the joke.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. The doctor seems to be as mad as his patient. So they share what we call the same universe of discourse. For example, what is universe of discourse? Vivi, for example, likes nerd subjects. So if she talks about nerd subjects with me that I'm not a specialist on it, maybe I'll be like trying to find meaning on what she says. But if she goes to a kind of uh, event for those kind of niche, she will be like in her proper setting to talk about that subject. Our academic talk may not mean for some people as it means for us. Well, sometimes we don't even understand each other in academic context, but this is another topic because sometimes we speak too difficult. Uh, so what Foucault says is that the mad person is not the one that does not produce meaning, and psychoanalysis will give an account for this. The mad person, or what we consider and segregate as a mad person, as a perverted person, as a deviated mind, is what escapes our standards of normality. So we normalize behaviors, we normalize discourses, we normalize thoughts, and the job of the psychiatrist or psychoanalyst is try to find meaning in what the mentally ill person says. So from this perspective, the doctor in the sketch is pretty successful, isn't he? Because they establish communication, because they share the same universe of discourse. So there were many changes in clinical approach, as we have discussed after Freud, uh, in this tendency that was very usual before of segregating the mentally ill people. Now they are listened to. With the advent of psychoanalysis, they started to be listened to, and meaning was considered to be something to be investigated and not simply disconsidered as inexistent. So there is meaning in the speech of what they call mad. Now, the concept of mad, the notion of mad or of madness here can be extended to various other aspects of human discourse. Mad for Foucault does not mean only those people who go to mental hospitals, but those that produce discourses that challenge normality, that push normality forward. That's why so many people on social networks nowadays have been claiming that Bolsonaro is mad. Why? Because he's questioning science, and science is a kind of taboo. Science for us, and I'm not here being Bolsonaro's attorney, okay? But science is a taboo in academic society. Science is a taboo in civilized world. So when you question science, when you question the fact or what we consider the observed fact that the earth is round, or that hydroxychloroquine doesn't work for COVID-19, when somebody questions that, this person is framed or is unframed in the discourses of normality. So we call them mad. In fact, he's not really mad. But in this category of mad, we can extend it to consider people who are psychopathic, perverted, or any other kind of personality disturb. Okay, so I said minutes before that the role of the psychoanalyst is listening to the patient. So as I have been telling you, since David Crystal's book, language is power. So appropriating yourself of language, using language, is exerting power. And we may consider that, or we may be led to the naive perception that speaking is power. But when you are in a clinic and you are speaking, and there is a psychologist or a psychoanalyst listening to you, where is power? The power is not in the hands of those people who speak the most. Power is in the hand of those people who are authorized to speak the definite, the final piece of discourse, to give you a diagnosis. So there is much power involved in the silence in psychotherapy, because he's looking for meanings, or for the meaning in the words of a mentally ill person. He will say what you intend by your own words. And we should be very careful when we are doing discourse analysis, because there is a tendency for us analysts, if we are not aware, if we are not prudent, to consider that we know everything people are saying, that we know the real meaning of somebody's words. And there is no real meaning. Language is always a matter of interpretation. Language is always a matter of mutual understanding. So the psychotherapist gives meanings that he considers to exist in a piece of discourse. But how can I access someone's mind and say, I know what you mean? So when somebody says, for example, intervenção militar, how can I say this person does not want democracy? Just because he said that. This is my interpretation of his request for a military intervention. But in his mind, military intervention could be a way to assure democracy. And it was like this, that the middle classes were manipulated by media, by certain groups of civil society, and by the army to promote a military coup d'etat, because they thought it was something to preserve democracy from the threat of communism. So it does not mean that asking for military intervention will assure that you are, or that you have a self-perception as a non-democratic person. You may say that you are a very democratic person and believe in military intervention, and believe in some bitter medicine for better times in the future. You see how someone's mind may work. So it's very arrogant to say that I know what you mean. No, I have a hypothesis, I have a clue, I have historical evidence, I have discursive evidence of what you say, and what you say tends to be related to authoritarian discourses, and what you say tends to be related with homophobic discourses. What you say can be related to chauvinistic or sexist discourse, but it does not mean you are a sexist, period. You are an authoritarian, you are an autocratic, period. Because this is a total analysis. And Foucault is exactly questioning this notion from positivistic science of a total, a final verdict on a subject. He is trying to show us the nuances in discourse, okay? So it's impossible to have access to someone's thoughts because of the advent of the unconscious. Psychoanalysis brought us the notion of the unconscious. So there is a risk, as I said, of arrogance of discourse, of the discourse analyst, consisting on forgetting that discourse analysis deals with representation and not with the objects or the concepts themselves. What is representation? If I tell you house, if I ask you to imagine a house, some of you will imagine a house with a front yard. Others will think of your own apartment. And it's not really a house, but it's your home. And you think of house as the notion of the place where you live. You may think of a big house, a small house. A house is not a house for everyone. What's the meaning of hunger? Do you think the meaning of hunger flows the same way for people who say, I'm hungry, I'd like to go to Burger King, or somebody in the deep in the small cities in Brazil, in Sertão, and they do not have anything to eat? Do you think hunger is always hunger? Is house always a house? For some people, a wooden house, a precary wooden house may be a home. For others, it's not even considered to be a house. So meaning is contextual. Meaning is not always the same. Meaning is not guaranteed. What is a terrorist? Certainly, if you go to an Al Qaeda militant and ask him if he's a terrorist, he will say that he's not, that he's fighting for his nation, that he's using the
Teacher,
tools. Yes,
can I say something?
of course.
Is that I am watching a series called The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and we have some people called apátridas. I don't know how to say it in English, but the media is saying that they are terrorists. Terrorist. Okay. I don't know how to pronounce it.
That's it.
Um,
Mhm.
okay. So when the Falcon went to talk to the leader, she said, "No, I'm not a terrorist. I'm fighting for a group's life, like their group, the poor people." She's fighting against companies who make people poor. And when the Falcon said, "Oh, I don't agree with what you are doing," then she said, "I'm fighting for you because he's poor." In the first episode, you have a talk between him and his sister, and his sister wants to sell. Oh, no, he wants to sell the boat that they grew up with because they have no money for it. And when she said that, he was like, "Yeah, you're right. Maybe you're not a terrorist." So it depends on the point of view. I
Yeah,
just remember that.
yeah. Consider the attack in Pearl Harbor in Japan. Sorry, consider the attack in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. Well, it was supposedly provoked by the attack to the Pearl Harbor base. So, who is the terrorist? Who attacked first? Who attacked second? Well, George Bush said that he was fighting against terrorism when he declared war on Iraq. But bombing another country, uh, supposedly because they have chemical weapons that were never proved to exist, isn't it a way of being a terrorist? So it's something that's really the meaning of the words are floating in space, and we grasp them and interpret them according to what Karl Marx called the conditions of production. Each of us have certain conditions of production that make us believe in a certain way and not in others. That's why for some Bolsonaristas, they are fighting for democracy. And for some left-wing militants, they are also fighting for democracy, but their understanding of democracy is different. For example, this debate between preserving lives or saving the economy. Some people see these instances as separated. Some others see them as integrated. Well, there's no wrong or right in this debate. There are different perspectives. Uh, so the psychoanalyst invests his time, his proficiency in the desire of teaching the mad person to mean according to social standards. Psychoanalysts intend to cure the mentally ill person with of his mental disease. Now, discourse analysts, there's a psychoanalyst professor at USP called Christian Dunker, that he says that discourse analysis and psychoanalysis, and psychoanalysis, they have they have a lot to do with each other. I used to say this with my, how can I say, not so accurate feeling that discourse analysis is the psychoanalysis of the text. So the difference is that we do not want to cure the subject. We just want to describe the subject, his ideology or her ideology, um, the discursive formations that are moved and interconnected in the interdiscourse to show how the subject means or tries to provide meaning out of his speech, out of his discourse or her discourse. You see? So discourse is always a matter of representation. When I talk about something, I'm representing something. Now, what is the meaning of representing? Again, presenting again. Presenting again something that was here and that was taken from us, and we want to bring it back. Language is representation. Let's go. Sorry about this. Sorry about this. I have a call here. Just a moment. Just a moment. Oh gosh. It's my my mom on WhatsApp. I think she doesn't know I'm in class. Uh, well, I turned off my cell phone. Just a moment. So I was following the class on the cell phone to see the chat, but if I don't see the chat, please speak to me, okay? Well, I lost track of what I was saying. Um, about the psychoanalyst. Does anyone remember? Well, so about the relationship between discourse analysis and psychoanalysis. So we do not have the intention, the arrogant intention of curing someone of his authoritarian ideologies or her authoritarian ideologies, or of these or that belief, these or that ideology, these or that discursive formation. We just want to describe. Remember the debate in linguistics between descriptivism and prescriptivism? Do you know these two trends in linguistics? What is the meaning of being a prescriptive linguist or a descriptive linguist? The notion of right or wrong that we find in grammars. Oh, this is grammatical, this is ungrammatical, this is standard English, this is non-standard, this is this is prescriptive, and a prescriptive approach to language, saying what's right or wrong. Discourse analysis belongs to a descriptive tradition. So we want to describe discourse. We want to say what is not behind discourse, but because when I say there's something behind, it's like there's a kind of cover or a veil that you will remove and see real meaning. There is no real meaning. Meaning is always a matter of representation. For example, the psychoanalyst wants to frame you. He wants you to discover the causes of your mental disease in order to treat it and be framed in society. I personally have an argument with my psychoanalyst almost every session because he wants to make me accept chaos in life, unpredictability. And I tell him, I'm a scientist, I'm an academic, I make a living writing projects, and projects are to be done, executed in time. So I don't take chaos as my way of life. And we have wonderful arguments and fights about this. So when we apply the notion of trying to cure someone or trying to judge someone based on his or her discourse, we tend to be arrogant and say, I know what's the right path to follow. I know what's the right thing to say. I know what you mean when you say that. And we don't know. We have clues. We have historical evidence. We have material evidence. We know the discursive formations. Or we can infer from someone's discourse the possible effects of sense, of meaning. When we discuss about discourse meaning from the perspective of discourse analysis, we don't treat meaning as meaning, but as an effect of language, an effect of language which is crossed by ideology. So, what is ideology? Ideology is like a pair of glasses that we all wear, but we can never take off. We are born and we are taught, we are endoculturated, to use Alaraya's term, inside an ideology or several ideologies. And we naturalize some behaviors. We naturalize some modes of speaking. We naturalize some values of society. And others, all the others, are considered unnatural. Any questions?
No, teacher. I'm
Okay.
fine.
I'll try to enter Google Meet from my notebook, okay, without audio, because I need to see what's going on. I really need the second screen. Right. So now I can see you here on the other screen. So madness, for example, is related to the order of perversion, to disease. And diseases, some diseases are analogous to madness because the people that have a certain disease should be excluded from society. Madness and other contagious diseases are factors that exclude people from society. The same can be said of crime. So hospitals and prisons have something to do. They are ways of excluding people. People affected by these anomalies are seen as elements that contaminate the other members of society. So they need to be excluded in hospitals, jails, to maintain the order of discourse and their social grammars. Remember, the order of discourse is all about the tools, external and internal to language, that are moved, that are used to preserve social order, to preserve powers and dangers, avoid the dangers. So examples of this exclusion are the mad, as we have been discussing, but those people who are adept of pedophilia, rapists, thieves, drug addicts, and terminally ill patients. And why not the so-called terrorists dictators, and corrupts. Okay, so for example, pedophily in ancient Greece, pedophily was considered a virtue. Did you know that? So the people who were adept of pedophily were not considered to be sick somehow. They were just normal. That was the standard. Now
Teacher,
our society has changed the standard. The same thing for menino usa azul, menina usa rosa. Before that, not very long ago, boys used to wear a dresses for boys. So this is a modern concept, and it has a lot to do with the industry and with the fashion. We can talk about that later on. Yes, you were going to say something.
I was watching a video made by some. I will talk em português. Eu estava vendo um vídeo feito por uma mostra cultural do Cine Direitos Humanos. E lá estava falando que, assim, muitos países lá da África, lá do continente africano, tem muitas pessoas tem muitas mulheres que elas, assim que elas menstruam, elas já têm um marido e elas já são induzidas a ter filhos, sabe? E o que o senhor está falando é uma coisa que acontece ainda hoje. Tem muitas ONGs feministas lá que tentam lutar contra isso, sabe? Lutar contra essa cultura, porque é uma cultura já de muitos anos, né? Então, muitas ONGs tentam lutar contra isso. Infelizmente, é uma coisa assim que está enraizada em algumas culturas, mas é uma coisa muito interessante ser falado que não é uma coisa que aconteceu só no passado, que ainda acontece ainda hoje.
Uh, so I had an argument with a friend of mine. She's a feminist, and she said, "Oh, those Muslims, they mutilate the women and they cut down their clitoris because they want to only men will have pleasure in sex." I said, "Calm down. Try to be more cultural relativistic. Maybe those women or part of them are happy to serve Allah." You see how problematic is this? Because we take our perspective as the standard, so it's horrible. It's women being mutilated, and we feel compassion for that, and we want to do something about it. But did anyone ask them if they were unhappy with the situation? Well, maybe some of them will say yes. This is not a homogeneous perspective. Some of these women, some of those women may feel unhappy with the situation, but some others may feel comfortable with this. If you go to a traditional neo-Pentecostal community or family, and if you ask about women's obedience to the husband, most of them will say it's right. They should be obedient. And what can we do? Because religion is part of our culture. And Christianity, in its different interpretations, is part of Brazilian culture. Will you say she is wrong and you are right because you disagree? You see how difficult it is. It's a matter of establishing a dialogue. But we always want to be right. You know why? Because we are always looking for truth. This is Friedrich Nietzsche, and Foucault will use this to talk about the will to power, which is one of the topics we are going to discuss. We always want to have the power. We always want to be right. We always want to be the messengers of truth. Once I was having lunch at Unicamp when I was a physics student, and there was a guy giving some pamphlets from the PSTU, and he was saying, only PSTU tells you the truth. And he was going to give me the pamphlet, and I said, no, thank you. I'm not religious. Because even when you are not religious, you can be religious. You can be religious with your academic knowledge. You can be religious with your political convictions. You can be religious with your perception of a pandemic. You can be religious in your relationship with a boy or a girl. You see? Somebody wrote something on the chat. Let me see. What was that? Okay. So
It's a hand raised, not the chat.
oh yeah. It's a sorry. Yes, please. Can you speak, Mirelli?
It's me, teacher. You were talking about the Muslim girls,
Mm-hmm.
and I follow some of them on TikTok. And I used to think just like the people you were saying, and I thought they need to be saved and things like
Mm-hmm.
this. But after I started to follow them, I saw that it's their choice because in eu esqueci. Islamismo. It's
Mm-hmm.
Muslim? Yeah.
Islamism.
Yeah, Islamism. The religion says that the woman she
Mm-hmm.
has the choice to wear or not to wear the hijab. Their money, if they are working, the money that she gets, it's hers, you know. So the
Mm-hmm.
bad part about it is the culture of their country. A girl said that she was comparing the religion and the culture of her country. She said that the religion it was this and this, you know. So eu vou falar em português. A religião dá muitos direitos para as mulheres. As mulheres podem fazer o que elas quiserem. Elas têm direito total de se casarem, se separarem quando quiserem. Têm o direito total de se casar de novo, entendeu?
Uhum.
Porém, a religião acaba prendendo muito. A religião não. A cultura, entendeu? Ela falou que não é a religião em si, porque eles culpam o islamismo, mas é tipo aqui no Brasil, o cristianismo prega o quê? Não é amor? Então por
Uhum.
que tem muitos cristãos espalhando ódio e não amor, entendeu? Então eu
Uhum.
acho que a gente não pode jogar isso pro islamismo, como muitas pessoas fazem. É mais a cultura do país, como o Brasil também tem isso, do
Uhum.
cristianismo
Mas
versus
talvez eles
alguns
achem.
cristianismos.
Uhum.
Yes,
Talvez eles achem que nem estão espalhando ódio. Talvez
exatamente.
eles achem que estão combatendo os odiosos comunistas anticristãos.
Pior.
Percebe? O quanto que a gente tem que ser relativista, assim, para tolerar certas coisas, porque não é nem tolerar, né? O Bono, do YouTube, né? Ele fala muito em coexistência. Tolerar é assim, ó. Eu não gosto da Raquel, mas eu tolero ela, né? Ela me causa pavor. Eu tenho medo dela, mas eu tolero. Agora,
Sou
coexistir,
séria,
não.
hein, teacher?
Brincadeira, viu, Raquel? Agora, coexistir, não. A Raquel é diferente de mim, existe no mesmo espaço e na mesma sociedade que eu. O fato dela ser diferente não faz dela minha inimiga. Nem há motivos para ter medo. Coexistir é muito mais difícil do que tolerar. Okay, for example, tolerance is something that is something that we perceive in diverse areas of our daily lives. Look at this picture that you see on the screen and tell me, is this a boy or a girl?
It looks like a girl.
A cute girl, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know that this cute girl that you see on the screen was one of the presidents of the United States?
You're kidding.
Yeah, this is Franklin Roosevelt.
Oh my
Remember, I
God.
told you that not something like 2 centuries ago, boys used to wear a dress because it was easier to clean the baby. So you see how fashion standards change. And this seems to be a very elegant dress with a hat, but this is a boy. E aí onde fica menino usa azul e menina usa rosa.
And when
is a construction.
I
Sim.
saw a very good, like, comprehensive video a while ago about this topic, and they mentioned these dresses that they used to put kids on. And at first, it was only like white. Children only had white clothes. When they started letting kids wear colorful clothes, boys used to wear pink because it came from red, which they considered to be a strong, like, courageous color, and girls,
Associated with nobility.
yeah, and girls used to wear light blue because it came from blue, and blue is like a calm color. It's a soft color. So it only changed, like, it only reversed very, very, like, not long ago. It was very recent that the tables turned. And the dress
blue.
thing, it was very common. Like, children did not wear anything except for these, like, long dresses for most of their childhood, and then they had like a rite of passage, like, oh, I can finally wear pants,
Yeah.
because I'm a big person now.
Yeah. Something else about these differences in meaning and now interlanguage. Can somebody greet me in Portuguese, please? Just to kind of make a scene here. How do you greet a person? Imagine you meet me on the beach and you want to greet me. How would you do?
E aí, professor?
Opa, beleza, tudo azul. Now in
Tudo
English.
azul.
Now in English.
Hello, teacher.
Hello, I'm not very good today. I'm feeling blue.
I'm feeling blue. Okay.
You know, the song style blues is about sadness. It's about feeling bad, being in a bad mood. Now, in Português, azul, tudo azul. Tá tudo jóia, tá tudo lindo, tá tudo maravilhoso. It's a sunny day. You see the difference? So when you talked about blue, Vivi, for women, maybe blue gives this idea of something quiet, something well-behaved. Now, red is associated with kings, the red caps of the kings. It's not by chance that Pope Francis chose not to wear red pieces of cloth like Benedict XVI. He chose white, which gives this idea of purity, peace, poverty. You see, colors, but this is to the field of semiotics, okay? But these different meanings vary not only in societies synchronically, as language varies synchronically, but also diachronically along time, along history. Okay, so I'll go back to the slides. Let me see. Let's go back to madness.
Sure.
Yes.
Will you put the slides on SIGA after we finish this, or?
Oh, for sure. I can open a Google Drive. I can open a Google Drive account and make them available, or I don't know, or put them in SIGA as a file. There are the other slides, yeah, the previous ones. I can put all of them. It's just.
Oh, no, it was just like a curiosity because they're really good. Like, they have all the information.
Oh yeah, thank you. Okay, I can make them available on a Google Drive and submit the link on SIGA. Right. So we were talking about the notions of terrorists, dictators, and corrupts. When Global TV Network talks about Nicolás Maduro, how is he described? Or when they talk about the Venezuelan situation, it's interesting, yeah. Everybody who has a left-wing positioning, the Bolsominions ask them to go to Cuba or to Venezuela. Now, they say that Venezuela is a dictatorship, and Global talks about Maduro as a dictator. Yeah. Or we have this other one, this notion of not only of segregation, but of social hygiene. Bandido bom é bandido morto. This is social hygiene. Do you have any other examples of social hygiene that we can find in everyday discourse?
Not like a saying like bandido bom é bandido morto, but we have so many acts that happen like all the time that are social hygiene. The arresting people for petty crimes, or keeping sick people in their houses, or even not like sick people, but for example,
burning a native Brazilian with alcohol, as it
yeah,
happened in Brasilia. Yeah.
or like if you have a relative who has Down syndrome or any kind of hand capability, and keeping them in the house because they're embarrassing or something.
Well, I'd like to talk about social hygiene from the class perspective. Most of you may have heard about a neighborhood in São Paulo called Higienópolis. Have you heard about it? O bairro de São Paulo chamado Higienópolis, conhecem?
I don't.
É onde mora
Não, professor.
o senhor ex-presidente Fernando Henrique Cardoso. Higienópolis é um dos primeiros bairros sanitizados de São Paulo, com rede de esgoto, né? Quando Higienópolis foi criado, já foi concebido para ser um bairro nobre, com toda a higiene, né, que se possa imaginar. Daí o nome Higienópolis. Mas essa higiene não era só sanitária. Dados altos preços dos terrenos, dos imóveis por lá, aconteceu também uma higiene social. O centro de São Paulo, que era habitado nos anos 70, eu fiz uma matéria com o professor Lúcio Kovarik, que era um estudioso, já falecido, um estudioso dessas questões sociais de habitação em São Paulo. O centro de São Paulo, que era populado, Brás, Bexiga, de cortiços, foi gradualmente sendo tomado por empreendimentos imobiliários que ia expulsando as pessoas cada vez mais para as periferias. Vamos trazer para o nosso contexto aqui a Península. Vocês lembram da polêmica sobre a Península, do vereador que não queria farofeiro na Península? Souberam disso nas redes sociais?
Foi um vereador,
Sim,
eu
uma
soube
confusão.
Ou era um
de
deputado, não lembro.
Eu soube de uns moradores aí do bairro do creme de la creme de São Luís.
Mas eu acho que teve um apoio institucional, acho que de um vereador ou de um deputado, não lembro, né? O fato é que o pessoal...
Foi de um restaurante, professor.
Também. Pode ser que... O fato é que isso também é uma tentativa de higiene social. Assim, eu cheguei aqui, a Península já era um bairro nobre, mas quem é mais antigo aqui sabe que ali não era uma região muito valorizada. Se tornou. Assim como a
só
Ponta da
esgoto
Areia.
ali.
Oi?
Eu não sei como é que o pessoal paga, tipo, milhões ali, sendo que é cheiro de esgoto, sabe? Não entra na minha cabeça.
Pois é. Lagoa da Jansen, né? Lagoa da Jansen. Eu chamo ali de Lagoa do Peido Eterno, né? Você vai ali e você não consegue... Eu não sei como as pessoas conseguem ir num restaurante na beira da lagoa. Todo o meu respeito a quem mora aí perto da lagoa, mas eu não consigo, né? Mas tudo isso tem a ver com higiene social, né? Você escolhe um lugar para ser valorizado, porque a vista é bonita, isso e aquilo, você tem que tocar os pobres dali. As palafitas do São Francisco. Né? Tá, mas alocou as pessoas, fez os apartamentos. Sim, claro, né? Quando se tem o mínimo de preocupação, né? Você pelo menos faz algo e dá uma moradia digna para aquelas pessoas. Mas o fato é, elas foram tiradas de uma área, não somente porque alguém foi caridoso de fazer um apartamento para elas, mas porque elas estavam incomodando visualmente com sua pobreza tá? Com a sua pobreza, com a sua falta de higiene, entenda aí os múltiplos sentidos de higiene, estavam enfeiando a paisagem. Ou como diz o Chico Buarque, estavam na contramão atrapalhando o trânsito. Né? Morreu na contramão atrapalhando o tráfego. Né? É muito cruel falar disso, porque assim, a especulação imobiliária, ela tira as pessoas dos seus lugares de vida, onde suas afetividades estão depositadas. Né? Isso aconteceu com o êxodo de nordestinos para São Paulo. Né? Isso aconteceu em São Paulo com a periferização da cidade, a expulsão das pessoas do centro para a periferia. Isso acontece na ilha agora. Né? Quando eu falo dessa higiene social, né, da exclusão do louco, né, ou do bandido, também tem a exclusão do pobre. Né? O pobre, de certa forma, é aquele que as elites não querem olhar. Né? Porque ver o pobre causa aquela sensação de que, ok, let's go back to 2014. The airport was looking like a bus station. And people were disgusted by that, the middle classes. I'd like to quote Professor Marilena Chauí here. Pobre classe média. Pobre classe média brasileira. Tão longe de ser rica e tão perto de ser pobre. But the middle classes are always looking forward to become rich and trying to escape poverty. This is the dilemma of the middle classes. So, considering this notion of terrorist, dictator, or leader, let's consider the case of Donald Trump meeting Kim Jong-un last year. Kim Jong-un was represented in the United States as a dictator, as an autocrat, until the moment that he decided to meet Donald Trump to discuss nuclear programs. So Trump called him the Korean leader. Now, it's different being a dictator and being a leader, isn't it? A dictator is a leader, but not all leaders are dictators. So it's a matter of word choice, of the meaning you want to provide. So as we have seen with Laraya, the barbaric or the terrorist or the mad or anything that should be excluded is the one who, by means of his habits, usually causes strangeness and most frequently uses force to impose his customs to others. But not only force, okay? In this case, for example, of social hygiene, it's a matter of segregation to make the place look beautiful or to make the, sometimes the place, most times the place, okay? So you should avoid poor people in airports, you should avoid poor people in places that are considered postcards of the city, you see? This is related to madness as well. These people are treated the same way mad people used to be treated last century in a process of segregation. So, for example, the Muslim is normally represented since Middle Ages as non-Christian. And being non-Christian means not belonging to God. It's not God's creation. But who is God? Or who are the gods? From the Crusades to the Trump and the Bolsonaro era, we have fought to defend and impose our way of producing meaning over the meanings of the others. From the Crusades, maybe before, maybe from the Romans. There is a movie called, I think it's História do Mundo. I don't know the title in English. Woody Allen, tá? É uma comédia do Woody Allen. E num dos quadros ele interpreta um filósofo romano que, na verdade, ele fala que ele é um stand-up philosopher. Ele faz uma brincadeira entre filósofo e comediante, né, que é quase a mesma coisa, e a função dele era entreter o César. E uma das piadas que ele conta é justamente essa. Esses cristãos são muito pobres. Dizem que eles são tão pobres, mas tão pobres, que eles têm somente um Deus para adorar. Onde está a graça dessa piada? da perspectiva romana politeísta. Os romanos adoravam vários deuses, né? Então, a pobreza se refletia não apenas em aspectos econômicos, mas em aspectos teológicos. You see? So, we are always trying to normalize our points of view. So, my question is, why does Brazilian mainstream media refers to dictator Nicolás Maduro, but to Janine Áñez? Do you know Janine Áñez? Last year, she was on the news, golpe de Estado da Bolívia, que eles alegaram fraude na eleição, e ela era presidente do, se eu não me engano, do Senado, e tomou posse como presidente, né? They call Nicolás Maduro a dictator. He was elected. But Janine Áñez was called the provisional president of Bolivia, ignoring the brute force used to bring her to power. The killing of natives, the killing of oppositors. You see, it's a matter of choice. It's a matter of the truth you want to provide. And I'm not saying that Nicolás Maduro is a perfect Democrat. But what I'm saying is there was an election in Venezuela. He was elected once, twice, 3 times. I don't know if you know that, but in Venezuela, there are the elections each 4 years, and in the middle of the term, there is a referendum. And people are asked if they want to have new elections or if the president should continue with his term. Did you know that? Isso se chama plebiscito revogatório. A Venezuela. Aí as pessoas vão questionar, mas os fóruns eleitorais da Venezuela são viciados. Bom, o fato é que tem sempre observadores internacionais. Na Venezuela você tem eleições a cada 4 anos. Com reeleições, eu diria que quase infinitas, o que não é bom mesmo, né? Ou pelo menos a gente não percebe como bom da nossa cultura aqui para a democracia. Mas a cada 2 anos, pergunta-se ao povo, e aí, esse presidente que tá, fica ou sai e a gente chama novas eleições? E em todos esses plebiscitos, Maduro tá ficando. Now, which is more democratic? Which is more democratic? Is it a system of elections like these, or the system of the Electoral College in the United States? The indirect vote in the United States, in which Hillary Clinton had more votes than Donald Trump, but Trump was elected. Because some states, everybody's equal, but some are more equal than others. You see? Have you read Animal Farm? Já leram George Orwell, Animal Farm? A fala dos porcos, todos são iguais. Na verdade, é uma alteração que eles fazem no Estatuto da Fazenda, né? O Estatuto da Fazenda dizia que todos os animais eram iguais. E aí os porcos aprenderam a ler, a mexer nos estatutos e alteraram. Todos os animais são iguais, mas alguns são mais iguais que os outros. Tá tudo ok até aqui, gente? So, let's consider impeachment. We had 2 cases of impeachment in Brazil. One of them, the left-wing militants claimed to have been a coup d'état against Dilma. And the other one was due to a crime, Fernando Collor's impeachment. And now some people are asking for the impeachment of Bolsonaro. We have a dilemma here. Is impeachment always a coup d'état? Do you understand coup d'état? Golpe de Estado. Or is it never? I'm not sticking to one or to the other point of view. What I'm saying is impeachment equals coup d'état, or impeachment different from coup d'état is not guaranteed. It's contextual. It depends on the conditions of production. It depends on the existence of a crime. And the crime that is a crime today may not be a crime tomorrow. Pedalada fiscal era crime em 2014, 15, 16. Michel Temer tomou posse. Aprovaram uma medida provisória que ele podia pedalar. Aquilo que derrubou Dilma, não derrubou o Temer. Autorizou ele a fazer o que Dilma fez e caiu, ele fez e ficou. The notion of genocide may be crucial for condemning some people or considering them innocent. The management of this pandemic may be crucial for our political life in the future. What I mean is, meaning is not always meaning. Meaning is what the context will tell us that it is. Let me read the chat. Yeah, he was clever. I cannot say that Michel Temer was not clever. Nobody in Brazil will govern without a Congress. Ah, mas o PT comprou um monte de deputado. O Fernando Henrique também comprou. E Sarney também comprou.
Bolsonaro também está comprando.
E Marechal Deodoro da Fonseca também comprou. E o próximo que vier depois de Bolsonaro também vai comprar. Sabe por que compra? Deixa eu trazer aqui um filósofo, né, do povo, chamado Bezerra da Silva. Já ouviram falar de Bezerra da Silva, o sambista? Para acabar com a malandragem, tem que matar todos os manés. Porque o alimento de malandro é mané. E é um fato. E ele diz outra coisa, ele não faz apologia da malandragem, ele fala assim, malandro soubesse como é bom ser honesto, seria honesto só por malandragem. But anyway, this is a structural problem. What I mean is it's a structural problem. And another example, I mentioned this about the democratic system in Venezuela. So what I mean here is, can we establish this comparison from a neutral point of view? Can we always compare cultures, compare democratic systems, compare political positionings from a neutral point of view? Is there a neutral point of view as people imagine in natural sciences, for example? I want to see this bacteria. So I'll put this bacteria in the microscope and I'm outside the glass I'm looking at and I want to observe the bacteria colony. Is it possible to look at society like this from an external point of view? No, because you belong to a society. So if you are analyzing your own society, you have a tendency to be more successful than analyzing other people's society, because you tend to input your values, beliefs, ideologies over the others and say, this is wrong. But this is wrong to whom? This is wrong to me, according to what I learned, according to what I believe. But some other society may not consider it wrong or strange or sick. You see? So we have what we call here semantic displacements. And semantic displacements may happen in history and geographically. For example, there were semantic displacements of the notions of adjectives like radical or Shiites, which is a trend in Islamism, communist, fascist, and Nazi. Along history, these notions, these definitions have changed. When Saddam Hussein was supported by the United States, the Shiites were taken as extremists, and the Sunnis, which was Saddam's group, were taken as moderates. O debate entre xiitas e sunitas. Já ouviram falar dessa dicotomia na doutrina muçulmana? Nos anos 80, falar que alguém era xiita era dizer que o cara era radical. Dentro da esquerda, eu militei um pouco, né, no movimento estudantil, a gente dizia, fulano de tal é um xiita. É aquele cara que ia para manifestação, levava coquetel molotov, queria sair na porrada, não aceitava postura mais pacifista, né? Tinha uns que a gente falava, fulano de tal não é nem xiita, ele é chato, né? Com o tempo isso mudou. Por quê? Saddam Hussein stopped being an ally of the United States to become evil. And the Sunnis were now the element to be fought against. And the Shiites that were evil are now allies. So it's geopolitical. A geopolitical displacement caused a semantic displacement. I guess nowadays nobody calls a radical person a Shiite. Já viram alguém radical ser chamado de xiita nos dias de hoje? Eu que sou velhinho já, né? Lá no meu tempo. Vocês não. Por quê? Porque xiita deixou de ser associado à ideia de radical. Agora xiita é oprimido. E de fato é, né? Porque eles agora não têm a hegemonia do Oriente Médio. Já tiveram, né? E por que tiveram? Because they were the kind of ethnic group that was chosen to avoid the spread of the Soviet domination over the Middle East. So the picture was only changed after the attack of September 11. In September 11, Al-Qaeda attacked the World Trade Center. And I'll tell you what, Al-Qaeda was not Shiite. Osama bin Laden was a Sunni. He was a Sunni. So, in fact, the Sunnis played an important role in fighting the ancient Soviet Union, USSR, especially in Afghanistan, where the main US ally against the Red Army was bin Laden, who until then, instead of being a terrorist, was considered a nationalist leader. Osama bin Laden was a nationalist leader, and he even had some business with George Bush, the father, in oil companies. So things get displaced. They are kind of slippery. Meaning is slippery. You cannot grasp meaning in your hands. It's like water. Meaning is liquid. When you try to hold meaning in your hands, it escapes through your fingers. So Foucault's studies is mostly about asylums, prisons, and taboos in human sexuality. He dedicates lots of his time to discuss the nature of the care that we have with the body and our sexuality. And I'd like to propose here a discussion about homosexuals. Let's think about the treatment received by homosexuals in a not too distant past. And I'd say even nowadays in the present, because history is like a pendulum. Yeah, history goes and comes back. Now, think of your parents. How do your parents picture the notion that they have of homosexuals?
My parents think it's a disease.
Yeah. They were considered to be sick, crazy, immoral, and they should be cured. Cura gay. Huh? Take them to
Yeah,
Marco
they think they need to go to the church to be cured.
They need God. Depression. People who feel depressed, people who suffer from depression, there are many people who say, this is lack of God in your life. It's a way to see the problem. And some people who are depressed go to church and they really get better. They really get better. So we cannot say this is totally wrong, because if the person believes that he or she is depressed because of a lack of a God, and he finds a God to believe in, okay, he may feel better. How about now? What is the tendency in modern civilized society about homosexuals? Is it to exclude or to include? Or do you think it's under dispute?
I think this topic is very complex, because there is nowadays, at least in the past couple decades, the people started appreciating or realizing really that many of the especially in entertainment and stuff like that, they
Yeah.
started realizing that most of the stuff that they consume comes from this group of people.
Yeah, you see
So
some people who
kind
are
of
named homosexuals, but they love Queen and they
exactly.
listen to Elton John and so on. Mhm.
Yeah. So there's this dichotomy now. Like, um, some people are like maybe not changing their minds, or they're being more accepting because they realize that it's not that bad. But we also have like very extreme points of view nowadays as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
because history is pendular. Now, when there was a shift, as you mentioned, Vivi, there was a shift in the treatment for about homosexuals. Somebody authorized it, and I'd say it was media discourse, art production, uh, mass culture authorized, or at least softened the pressure over homosexuals. Nowadays, we have uh, a going back movement uh, concerning values, religious values, moral values. So it's still under dispute. But there was a time that they could breathe and say, okay, we do exist as a group of people who need to be respected. So we have the gay parade, for example. Did you know that the gay parade in São Paulo, well, nowadays there's no gay parade anymore because of the pandemic. But when there was a gay parade, it is the second event that most moves the economy in São Paulo. The first one is Formula One. The second one is the gay parade. So it's important for the market. In the 70s, uh, there was a kind of niche, consuming niche for homosexuals and the LGBTQI community. Songs, ways of dressing, uh, nightclubs. This moves the economy. So it's all about business as well. So the idea of homosexuality as perversion or madness from the perspective of the market does not fulfill its purposes because the purpose of the market is to sell. So since the maintenance of power depends on the capitalist mode of production in our Occidental society, ignoring a niche of marketing or of market, whatever it may be, is the real postmodern taboo. And when I talk about postmodern, I'm talking about this identity segregation, like the black fighting for the black, homosexuals fighting for homosexuals and ignoring the oppression over the black, native Brazilians, Indians fighting for Indian rights, but forgetting that their problems are similar to the problems of Quilombola people. You see, this fragmentation in society resembles us of the popular saying in Rome, dividir para governar. You see, so identity is important because it makes you feel unique, but it can be manipulated or it can be worked out in order to either integrate or segregate. It depends on how we see our own identity and the others. So, however, in our present times, with the new conservative ascension through a segment of religious moralist discourse, this perception is under dispute. The notion of the homosexuals as sick people is coming back. Yes, we are at a turning point in the pendulum of discourse and history. The Trump era, the Bolsonaro era, the in Ukraine, we have an autocratic regime. I think I'm not sure if in Hungary, but there is a new conservative movement that's becoming prominent not only in Brazil but all over the world. Somebody said something like this. Yes, Vivi said pink money. Yes, pink money is money, whatever it is. Yeah. Uh, I've seen something. I really laugh at these kind of things. There's a group in Facebook called Esquerda Compra da Esquerda. Have you heard about this? I think this is, an illusion. Anybody can say, okay, I belong to the left wing and I'm going to sell my products here. And you do not have control of the person's convictions. But we believe that we are a community with that. Social networks, virtual social networks, have potentialized this effect of belonging. Now, this may be just an illusion. Okay, this may be just an illusion. In social networks, we don't establish relationships with the other. We establish relationships with the self. I want to get in touch with people who are exactly like I am. In fact, I don't want to deal with alterity with the other. I want to deal with myself. So I'm narcissistic and I'd like to establish relationships with people as narcissistic as I am. This is the basic principle. This is my perspective, okay, of social networks. It's the perspective I take from social networks. It's the place of the big I. It's I and I again and I again. I think, I believe, in my opinion, it's wrong according to what is the source? It's myass.com. Yeah. Okay. So the last concept that we should talk about is the will to truth. Okay. We have been discussing the will to truth all together with madness, but I'll give more focus on the will to truth now. Foucault will borrow the notion of will to power from Friedrich Nietzsche and make an analogy with the will to truth. Let me ask you a question. Why do you study? Why do you study language? Why do you want to become English teachers? What are you looking for? An academic career? What do you want to be as teachers? Why do people study engineering? Why do people study law, medicine, psychology? What are people doing when they are studying? They are searching for what? Mirelli, to get a job, just a moment. To get a job, to earn money, to pay the bills. So that's right, bingo. To serve capitalist world, to fit capitalism the best you can. I believe that this is one perspective. Okay, but to serve capitalism, not only merely surviving, but living with some dignity, you need to accumulate money. And to do so, you should be the good guy or the good girl in what you do. You should be under the spotlight. You should be the one, sorry, that has, I got the power. You should have the power. And what brings power in academic world?
Is it knowledge?
Knowledge. Knowledge can be understood as the truth. You are the messenger of the truth. This is, for example, if I can define a virus, this virus can be cured with this and that vaccine. It will give you power. We see that the powerful nations, the economic powerful nations, like the United States, Russia, and so on, They were the first ones to come up with a vaccine. And power brings more knowledge. That brings more power. That brings more knowledge. That brings more power. In a perpetual movement, you see? So we all study because we want to be powerful. And I mean, when I mean powerful, I don't mean only being a social leader or uh, governing a nation or serving an institution, but we want to be recognized. We want to be admired. We want to be to have our discourse not segregated as mad people discourse, but we want to have our discourse validated. Oh, I have to do a paper on discourse analysis, so let me call Professor Ushua on WhatsApp and ask him the bibliography. This brings me power. You are recognizing me as an authority in discourse analysis, you see? So we are all looking for power, and power can be acquired by means of knowing the truth or the truths. Science is a truth, or what we believe to be a truth, is one of the possible truths. Ciência. A palavra ciência vem do quê? Scientia, em grego. Conhecimento. Conhecimento do quê? Conhecereis a verdade. Vivem citando isso. Conhecereis a verdade e o que mesmo, gente?
E a verdade vos libertará.
Exatamente. Ou, nos dias de hoje, conhecereis a verdade e a verdade vos empoderará. E é assim em todas as áreas. Na ciência, quem tem o poder? O pós-doutor, o livre docente, a autoridade que publica na revista Qualizar. Dentro das igrejas, quem tem poder? O monge, o padre, o pastor. O papa chega a ser considerado infalível. O papa não erra. Nunca. Essa é parte da doutrina católica. Esses católicos que ficam chamando o Papa Francisco de comunista poderiam, inclusive, ser excomungados, porque eles estão quebrando um fundamento da doutrina católica, que é: o Papa não erra nunca. Ele é infalível, porque ele é a representação do divino na Terra. Okay? So, Foucault will borrow from Nietzsche this notion of the will to power, and he will say that since language is material and an effective means of acquiring and maintaining power, when we control discourses, and by discourses, we understand also the knowledge produced by means of these discourses, when we control discourses through the illusion of language transparency, one attempts to acquire and control power. So when I produce a scientific truth, I'm producing power. When I control this truth, when I keep this as a secret, as a state top secret, this is power. When I open a process to the media, I'm using my power to say what is public and what is private. Os famosos vazamentos das operações de Polícia Federal, segredos de justiça que são vazados. Vazar uma informação ou manter uma informação sob sigilo é um exercício de poder por meio da linguagem. So it was no coincidence that in the USSR, the courses on language as well as philosophy had their importance diminished by the Kremlin materialist regime, because they said language is not material. Language is subjective. The argument of the Frankfurt School, of Foucault and others, of Mikhail Bakhtin, is to say, no, language is material. Language hurts. By means of language, you can move multitudes. You can declare war. You can make peace. you can change social order. Okay, so under the argument that language is not material and therefore would not be of interest of the regime to study it, they simply diminish the value of human sciences or language sciences to invest in rockets, to invest in nuclear weapons, to invest in natural sciences. Até hoje, a gente tem essa ideia de que somos uma sub-área dentro da universidade. Os caras das exatas chegam para você, mas e aí, você faz letras para quê mesmo? O que vocês produzem? E aí, gente, como que a gente responde isso? O que a gente produz no curso de letras? Existe essa ideia utilitária de ciência, de que a ciência que a gente faz tem que servir para alguma coisa, para gerar uma patente, para gerar riqueza. Está tendo alguma consequência disso recentemente? Quem aqui tem bolsa de iniciação científica nessa turma? Agora vão numa turma de segundo ou terceiro ano, em qualquer curso de engenharia, e pergunta quem tem uma bolsa de iniciação científica. É bem mais provável que alguém levante a mão. Porque tem bolsas para as áreas de tecnologia, mas não tem bolsas para as áreas de sociologia, filosofia, linguagem, ciência política.
Professor, eu não sei se isso é verdade, mas recentemente eu vi uma portaria dizendo que não vai ter mais bolsa de iniciação científica para ciências humanas.
É a
Só
mais
para
dura
ciências
e crua
exatas.
verdade. É a mais dura, crua e nua verdade. Inclusive, o alto comando andou dizendo que quem quiser fazer pesquisa em ciências humanas, que faça com o dinheiro do próprio bolso. Por quê?
Porque as pessoas não estão mais interessadas em resultados imediatos do que resultados de estudos que vão ajudar no futuro, certo?
Exato. E assim, nós somos uma ciência não da prova. Nós não provamos. Eu aqui estou horas e horas aqui discutindo Foucault com vocês para mostrar assim, a verdade nem há. São as verdades. Elas são contextuais, elas são a partir de pontos de vista. Né? A própria percepção pós-estruturalista de verdade, né? Ela é diferente da percepção estruturalista das ciências naturais. De que isso é igual àquilo. Eu provo, eu repito isso no laboratório milhões de vezes e o resultado é o mesmo. Uma análise discursiva de qualquer corpus feita pelo analista A pode ter aproximações, mas vai ter também seus distanciamentos se for feita pelo analista B. Isso não está muito de acordo com o discurso enquadrado de ciência que a gente tem na nossa sociedade, que ainda é herdeira do positivismo. Acho que Vivi caiu. Deixa eu ler aqui o chat. Sim. Então, é isso. O corte de bolsas, assim, eles falam em áreas prioritárias. O que são áreas prioritárias? São aquelas que geram dividendos econômicos. Basicamente isso. Geram uma patente, uma tecnologia. A gente não gera patente. A gente gera alguma consciência, capacidade interpretativa. Tá difícil, né? Interpretação de texto ultimamente está difícil, né? Principalmente em tempos de polarização. Okay, so the argument of Bakhtin, the argument of Foucault, the argument of Austin, which is a semanticist that I would like to quote here, is that language is material, and as we speak, we do things. Austin has a book called How to Do Things with Words. He will say that as we say something, if we have the what we call the felicity conditions, as condições de felicidade, if you have the authority for saying something, when you say it, you do something. So we change the reality among us, around us, okay? Thus, language is material and alters the material conditions of human existence. For example, I'm not a priest. I'm not a judge. I cannot say now, Rebecca and Viviane, I declare you married. I cannot do that because I'm a professor, not a judge, not a priest, not a pastor. I cannot do that because in Brazil, marriage in religion, marriage in the same among the same sex is a taboo in religion, not according to the law. So there is a conflict. Okay, these are the conditions of production. But I can declare, Viviane, you are approved. You passed my subject. Mirelli, unfortunately, just an example, okay? Unfortunately, your grades were insufficient. And you will have to take my subject again next semester. I have the authority to do that because I have the knowledge to do that. The institution authorizes me to use this knowledge to establish judgment, to establish, to give you grades that may change your life and hold you one semester more in the university. And maybe enable you or disable you to run for an opportunity on the market. You see how language is material? Exemplos básicos de como a língua muda a realidade de vocês. Aprovar ou reprovar um aluno é uma questão de linguagem. Vocês escavam a aprovação de vocês escrevendo papers, apresentando seminários. E isso muda as condições materiais de vida de vocês. Agora, claro que dizer nem sempre é fazer. Mas dizer pode ser fazer, se você tem a autoridade para tal. É o que o Austin chama das condições de felicidade. Tá? Para casar alguém, eu tenho que ter autorização institucional. Para aprovar ou reprovar alguém também, para declarar condenado, para estabelecer uma dosimetria de pena, eu preciso ser um juiz. Mas quando eu digo, eu faço. Se eu sou um juiz e digo, fulano é culpado, condeno, sentencio 5 anos de prisão. A pessoa ficará 5 anos preso. Ok? Essa é a ideia da performatividade da linguagem. A língua é performativa. Ela faz coisas. Any questions so far?
Não.
Estão cansados, né?
O professor já deu horário.
Era 10 para 1? Eu pensava que era 1:10, ó, tava tão animado. Ok, então a gente vai voltar a falar do Will to Power, tá? Na próxima aula eu vou retomar de Will to Power. Hoje a gente passou a aula todinha falando de loucura, né? Essas loucuras sobre a loucura. Eu vou retomar isso e vou tentar ser um pouquinho mais breve quando eu falar dos dispositivos internos da linguagem, se bem que eles são os mais valorosos para nós, porque eles vão nos apresentar a teoria da análise do discurso. Teoria da análise do discurso disponível no livro da professora Eni Orlandi, já disponível no SIGA para vocês. Quem já terminou o Foucault já pode começar lendo o análise do discurso da professora Eni, tá bom? E eu vou, na aula seguinte, tentar finalizar Foucault e entrar já em análise do discurso. Tá?
Professor,
Sim.
Só para tirar uma dúvida, só para ter certeza. Eu vi lá no SIGA que tá falando que vai ter prova dia 22. Não vai ter, né?
Não, o SIGA me obriga a pôr 4 datas de prova, senão eu não consigo lançar programa, não consigo lançar nada. A próxima prova de vocês vai ser um trabalho, não vai ser uma prova. Vai ser um trabalho escrito, de natureza analítica. Vocês vão aplicar a análise do discurso, tá? Eu vou dar algumas opções para isso. Não vai ser um trabalho, vai ser um monte de possibilidades de trabalho, vocês vão escolher uma, tá bom?
Tá bom.
Gente, eu acabei de fazer a chamada, então, tirei o print aqui, a gente vai descansar agora, vou parar a gravação e vou colocar essa aula no ar assim que possível, tá? Tenham uma boa tarde, desculpem o alongar. Sim, pode falar.
Rapidinho, a pessoa já veio falar de um livro de análise do discurso, História e Práticas, de Francine Mazeret?
No nome não é estranho, o título da obra não é estranho, mas eu não li. Tá?
Acho que eu vou tentar para o momento. Esse.
Quem é o autor? Desculpa.
Ela. Francine, acho que é Mazierre, eu não sei, em francês, eu acho.
Peraí, deixa eu ampliar você. Francine Mazierre. Não li, tá? Não li, não conheço a autora. É indicado por Glória esse aí?
Isso.
Ah, tá. A Glória gosta dos autores franceses também.
Exato.
Eu tô naquela, assim, eu vejo muita gente falando da nossa análise do discurso que a gente faz como análise de discurso de linha francesa. Uma vez o professor Dominique Menguenot veio num congresso internacional de análise do discurso aqui no Brasil e ele deu um puxão de orelha na gente para a gente parar com esse negócio de linha francesa. Que ele disse que a análise do discurso que a gente faz aqui no Brasil, ela tem algumas peculiaridades que já autorizariam até a gente falar em análise do discurso de linha brasileira, né? Que é a gente aplica análise do discurso à cultura de massa, a gente aplica análise do discurso a games, né? Eu tenho amigos que pesquisam games, eu pesquisei redes sociais. Lá eles ficam muito na questão do discurso político, de gênero, né? E aqui a gente tem as nuances. Então achei bacana da parte do Menguenot, que é um francês, chegar aqui e dizer, olha, análise do discurso de linha brasileira ou de linha campineira, né? Já que nasce lá na Unicamp, né? Mas no fundo é a mesma origem ali, né? Eu gosto de chamar muito mais de estudos semântico-discursivos da linguagem, porque aí eu posso também abrir para
Abranger, né?
mexer com semântica enunciativa, né? Com a semântica do que o professor Eduardo Guimarães chama de semântica do acontecimento, né? A semântica do uso real das palavras. Mas parece uma leitura
Peraí.
interessante. Se é
É,
indicado
sim,
por Glória, certamente é bom.
eu ia lhe perguntar se ele tinha visto esse livro. Ele é muito bom. Antes da pandemia eu tava com uma cadeira com ela, só que infelizmente não concluí a cadeira.
Tem um outro livro, para quem, né, se vocês quiserem pesquisar, devem achar o PDF ou devem achar ele parcialmente disponível no Google Books, que é esse aqui, só um minutinho. Em Orlândia, ela escreve com mais profundidade, mas a escrita dela talvez seja um pouco mais espiral para vocês. Tem também o livro da professora Helena Nagamini Brandão. Não sei se dá para ver. Introdução à Análise do Discurso. Tá? Esse é uma ótima leitura para ler junto com a Orlândia, para ir comparando. Ambos são livros escritos baseados nos cursos de análise do discurso que essas professoras davam. Helena Brandão, se não me engano, também era professora de análise do discurso da Unicamp e ambas escreveram esses livros para suas disciplinas. Né?
Qual é o autor, professor, desse? Introdução à análise do discurso? Autora, no caso.
Helena Nagamini Brandão.
Ah, certo.
São livros introdutórios, eles são pensados mesmo para alunos de graduação que estão tendo o primeiro contato com a análise do discurso. Tá?
Certo, professor.
Pois tá certo,
Obrigada.
gente. Me desculpem o alongar da aula, mas o assunto é tão gostoso, pelo menos para mim, né?
Verdade.
Eu vou ficando. Mas a gente continua na quinta que vem. Talvez a gente precise de algumas aulas extras. Depois eu quero que vocês pensem aí qual seria um dia bom. Não sei se vocês têm uma disponibilidade de uma sexta-feira ou de um sábado, né? Ou se vocês preferem uma aula síncrona. Eu não gosto muito de aula síncrona, não, porque não tem a interação, e aí eu nunca sei se estou sendo claro, se bem que a gente nunca está sendo claro, tá? Princípio básico da análise do discurso, nunca somos claros. Mas vamos pensar sobre isso juntos, vamos amadurecer, talvez no enquete, no Siga, tá bom?
Tá bom.
Tá bom, um abraço para
Bom
vocês.
dia.
Uma ótima tarde, um bom almoço.
Tchau, gente. Bom almoço. Até a próxima.
Até mais, professor.
Tchau.
Até mais, gente.
Tchau, tchau.